Next item is agenda item 4.4 PUD 2019-000112. Mr. Year Out, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave Year Out with planning staff. PUD 2912 is a request to rezone from SF5 single family the approximately 9-acre piece of property as outlined on the map. Your staff report makes this as a reference, and I think the directional on that is wrong. It should be east of Woodlawn, not west. I've been guilty of that directional error many times, like 45 years. So the property is to request this to be rezoned to a planned unit development, and this drafted is pretty much a single use operation. The aerial in question shows the property and kind of highlights the one main issue that staff and I think most of the people here are going to address, which is unfortunately not a zoning issue, is a platting issue. This property is unplatted. Any development that might occur in the future, regardless of whether the zoning is changed or not, will require a plat to be presented, and at that time, the issue about drainage and impacts on floodplain and everything else we address through the plat. It is not a subject of the zoning change. However, there is a condition in our recommendation concerning the idea that if any zoning change occurs, no development, the zoning would not be published until a plat would be subsequently approved. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on any of the information we've got here, other than to note the comprehensive plan shows this as an area appropriate for residential and employment mix. So we find in the comp plan references to the golden factors that this is not out of character with what the comprehensive plan envisions for the property. This is the revised site drawing to show what they are proposing. You should have a hard copy on your desk of their new drawing. With it is going to be a blue attached page that summarizes our revised recommendation. So the plan that has the blue has got this drawing attached to it. They are adding a restriction to put additional buffer zones around the property on the west, adjacent to Chisholm Creek condominiums, along the north and the east, abutting where they butt up to other single-family developments that you will see in the aerial. You can see there's residential development here to the north and also to the east. This is Teal Cove to the east, and help me, what's the one to the north? Northbrook, yeah. And both those developments within their plats, this is a large platted reserve that's part of the Teal Cove development that is a reserve for open space and drainage. And then this area along Northbrook is also a platted reserve for drainage and open space. So the additional buffers that they are adding on their PUD butt up to essentially large reserves that are open space. That's what's shown on that drawing. The summary in our staff report talks about the impacts on drainage. We go through all the language they proposed. That's been modified in our recommendations. And on the blue sheet, I want to spend just a brief amount of time to discuss what we're adding there. We're recommending that the proposed uses be remained as we originally recommended. They came back with modifications in their exceptions that only accepted multifamily. Essentially, we're saying the PUD would allow LC uses. Under LC, a lot of other residential uses could be allowed in there. And we want to go back to their original language. It just says all residential uses are prohibited. If we use our current language, it would open it to duplexes, accessory apartments, assisted living, group homes, group residences, both limited and general, and we still feel that's inappropriate. In their list of prohibited uses, in their revised drawing that you have at your table, we had recommended that they still add that teen clubs in the city are prohibited. They left that out in what they prepared and submitted. And I should say this revised drawing got on my desk Tuesday when I came in. I was ill Monday, so the general note 3 has to do with how they would address the parking. They are still recommending, if you read your little site plan, they're recommending a certain percentage to be paved and the other part be allowed to be all weather surface, which could be gravel. Their language is talking about anything that's not paved has to be north of the parking area as shown on this site plan, which would be up in this area. We're recommending the original language you recommended. I'll leave that to you guys to decide what you want to do. Their new proposed item 17 was originally, or I'm sorry, their 15 originally was 17 dealing with the sign language. We had originally said NR signs and limited to monument types. They came back and requested just one sign to a limit of 100 square feet in size. We're requesting you modify that, but put the height limit maximum on the monument sign at 15 feet. There are revisions about landscaping. The original staff recommended language dealt with compliance with the landscape ordinance. They came back with the proposed language of enhanced buffers as shown on this site drawing, and their language shown on their site drawing. We're okay with that. The last item on the bottom of that blue page, we talk about language that was taken from a conditional use that was approved in 2014 for what is now known as Noah's Event Venue out on the east side in the beyond 13th and Webb. The address that escapes me off the top of my head, but one of the conditions there that was attached had a requirement that in discussion with code enforcement they found very beneficial in managing these types of event centers, in that it requires the facility to establish a website specifically that, as outlined in the languages you'll see on the blue sheet, it talks about a complete list of all scheduled events, including dates and times, that contact information for the operator, including email and phone number, to be used to notify the operator with any issues concerning the operation be posted on that website, and that a phone line be manned with a live person during each event. So it's not a phone that could be called and leave a voicemail. There has to be a live person operating that. And according to the code enforcement folks, they have found that very beneficial in helping to manage and deal with any issues raised concerning these event centers. And so we're recommending that in addition to all the other language in our staff recommendations, the revisions outlined on your blue sheet and this new language be added to what's recommended. I won't spend any time to speak on this, but this is looking at the site from 37th Street to a great degree. I'm sure many of you have been out by there and know it. The biggest issue with it, as you can see, here's the bridge that crosses 37th Street for Chisholm Creek in this area. That's actually looking through that bridge north towards the property. And you can see the low area. And I don't know that we've got flood maps that were available, but they are in some of the information that you got from some of the neighbors that filed objections that we made copies for you. There's a copy of the general flood map of the city GIS stuff that shows how this area is impacted by floodplains and other drainage concerns in the area, both floodways. And for the benefit of the board, Joe Hickel, the city stormwater engineer, is here if there are questions of the city engineering or stormwater about what really is going on here. But as I will stress again, not only for the benefit of the planning commission, but also for the benefit of the audience, flood-related issues would be addressed in detail and have to be addressed at the time plats come forward. It's not really an issue in the zoning beyond the fact we are asking as a condition that this zone change, if approved, would not occur until such time as the plat would be addressed and approved by the city. And I would also add, in the packet, the applicants, is, I think, mailed to you all, they talk about the fact that under the existing zoning, a single-family home can be built, a church can be built, a school can be built. There are a number of things that could be built. Same issues would have to be dealt with. It would have to be platted, and it would have to be addressed of how access off of 37th Street and driveways back into the buildable area on the property would occur in order for building permits for anything that all would have to be addressed. So I know we've got a large crowd here that wants to talk about this, and so I'm going to stand for, you have our staff report and all the recommendations.
Questions?
Stand for any questions.
Questions for Dave. Mr. Richardson.
Dave, we need to go down through this blue sheet here because it's a little confusing. Just let me read these off. Let's see if we understand. I want to understand what the staff position is. Number one leaves in all residential uses except for multifamily. The staff had recommended no residential uses.
Yes.
Are you okay with the applicant's proposal? How's the staff stand on that?
No, when we say leave as recommended, I'm talking about our original recommendation in your staff report, which was to just simply take their original language and eliminate residential uses.
Okay, let's go to number two. I'm confused there about whether or not they want to leave a teen club in?
No. Our recommendation was, their original draft didn't talk about it. Our recommendation in the staff report limits and prohibits teen club. In what they revised that you have attached to the blue sheet, now it takes it out. And we're saying leave it back in.
I'm still confused. So does the staff?
Our original recommendation included prohibiting teen clubs.
Let's forget about the original of everything,
Okay.
but teen club in the city, the staff recommends that it be prohibited or not?
We recommend it be prohibited.
Okay. All right. Somebody writing these down. Number three, I'm going to leave that as staff recommendation, and that has to do with
On street parking.
On the parking.
That is, what we're saying is parking on site has to meet city code. And that includes if any of it is unpaved, it's got to be an all-weather surface as defined by the zoning code. We don't get into percentages or anything of that nature.
So your recommendation, leave it as city staff without going into it as city code says, okay? And number three, which is the sign language, what's your recommendation there?
We're recommending, we recommend our original language. I'll leave that to you. One of the clarification is to add in language that the height limit of 15 feet were acceptable with what they're adding. So I guess, it's kind of a combination of both. Because we reference in our district is the base right, and the issue is monument signs at a maximum of 15 feet.
What about the 100 square feet? I mean,
And 100 square feet.
would that be allowed in neighborhood retail?
Neighborhood retail allows 96 square feet.
Okay, so we're talking about 15 feet and 100 square feet here, a
Yes.
maximum, and
Yes.
it has to be a monument?
Yes,
And their recommendation is not to have a monument?
they don't talk about it.
Okay. And you're okay with changing the landscape as to their changes, which includes these buffers,
Yes,
as opposed to the original language?
which
and-
just references code requirements, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions for Dave? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Mr. Green
Hey,
has a question.
Dave, it's really a minor question. I noticed that under general notes number 4, that setup and cleanup shall only be allowed for half an hour after closing on, for the entire week. Is that pretty standard to just allow this for cleanup, or can they?
That's the same language that was done on the NOAA event venue. And because the agents were also the one who handled that case, I think they simply copied the language that got ultimately approved. It talks about hours of operation of the facility within a kind of a little extended time that they could have folks in there to do some cleanup work.
Thank you. Before I go to the agent or applicant, Joe, one of the letters that we got, as a matter of fact, from Homeowners Association, dealt with drainage. Can you just briefly go through the process that you go through to make sure that this doesn't add to the problem?
Okay, certainly. I'm Joe Hickle. I'm the stormwater engineer for the city of Wichita. And the process that we're talking about, this is a little bit ahead of the curve. Projects come to my desk when we're in the platting phase, and the applicant and their engineer will prepare a drainage plan to meet the provisions of the stormwater manual, and in this case, also no impact to the floodplain. So what that means is when they finally figure out what they're going to do with the site plan, they're figuring out how they're going to control drainage to meet the provisions of detention, channel bank protection, and water quality, as well as water quality. So that whole process happens prior to the subdivision committee meeting when we discuss platting, and you'll hear at those meetings that I've approved the drainage plan or I have not. And that process will continue exactly the same on this project. If this work that you're doing now is such that you approve the zoning change and you make it contingent upon plat approval, then we'll go into this process that I've just described, that the drainage plan would have to be approved before the plat is approved. And that's the process. Does that answer your question?
Almost all of it, except the end goal is to make sure that
I'll just say do no harm. We're not going to allow drainage coming off of this site to be injurious to any of the neighbors or the floodplain.
that's what I needed. Thank you. Agent or applicant, come forward. You have 10 minutes.
Levi Bond with Caw Valley Engineering, agent for the applicant, 200 North Emporia, Suite 100. How about now? We good? All right, we'll get close today. Okay, once again, Levi Bond, agent for the applicant, 200 North Emporia, Suite 100. The applicant is in attendance, so I'm going to keep my portion short so he has a chance to talk about his vision for this site. Just quickly wanted to go through from a zoning aspect. I think Dave did a good job of presenting everything that we're asking for. And quickly, as most of you know, this was scheduled for last month. And after we were notified of all this neighborhood concern, we went ahead and postponed it. And then we went to 2 neighborhood association meetings. We went to the Chisholm Creek to the west, and then we also went to the Northbrook to the north. And in that time, we took into account a whole bunch of things, and we revised the PUD a couple times. And that's what's before you today. You should have all got in your packet. If you don't have one, just wave your hand, and I have some extras I can hand out. So we went ahead and we went there, and we had some general concerns. And in the letter, we kind of lined out how we had responded to all of them. If you have any particular questions on how we address them, just go ahead and ask me at the end of the presentation. Like I said, I want to save some time for Jake. I wanted to go ahead and just quickly touch on what this is. This is a venue for weddings and life cycle events, maybe some small corporate events. This is not an event center like Hartman Arena, which ironically enough is Jake's last name. But this is not ticket sales. This is hosting small events in the venue. It's very similar to the NOAA's. And similar to NOAA's, we're also bounded by, as Dave said, drainage reserves on the north and the east, and then we're going to do a pretty large landscape buffer on the west. And we're going to keep those in a natural state so the neighbors around us still get to enjoy the woods and they still can see the pond. We're not making an attraction for them, but we're not trying to take any of the natural state out. What it's not the general entertainment district. It's not just an event center where you're selling tickets. It's not a nightclub. This is just to host events. Any language in this reflecting anything about nightclubs is just because As you know, at weddings, if you're host a reception, there's gonna be drinks there, and if there's any drinks and there's any music and dancing, then that's what the nightclub language is about. It's not about being a nightclub for profit or anything like that. In reference to Dave's updated staff recommendations, we ask that you go ahead and approve our request as submitted and take into account his recommendations. The only one we'd ask you to consider is allowing single-family residential on this. Of course, this is my request, not really the developers, but that from a land planning standpoint, if something ever fails, you don't want to have to go back and do a down zone to do what it was originally zoned for. So if you could just allow the single-family to remain, that's our only request. That's the only change we want to staff recommendation. This time I'd like to ask Jake to come forward and kind of speak about his vision for this event venue.
Good afternoon. My name is Jake Hartman, 1879 North Peckham Court, and I'm here to talk to you about our proposed venue. My partner Nick Mills and I have bought this property about 1.5 years ago. Our original intention with the land was, since it's zoned residential, was to plat it out into individual large lots for large residential homes. The more we got into and on the land, looking around at the foliage, the natural landscape that's already there, which is really hard to find in the city, we kind of moved away from apartments, multifamily thoughts, homes. Always kind of had it in the back of my head. Wedding venue center, I've got a little background in wedding photography. That's the reason it kind of popped in my head originally. But our thought for this property is there's not anything like this in the city proper. You've got your Noah's Event Center, which is kind of an office building, a vanilla box per se. You've got your classic spots downtown, but there's not really anything in the city that is like French country. If you want to go to, say, a barn wedding, which isn't what this is, you'd have to travel, to Newton or outside of town quite a ways, where there's not a lot of opportunity for guests to book in hotel rooms nearby, and it's a little bit of a jaunt. So in doing some research with some of the local wedding planners and just brides, we took some time to go research and at different bridal fairs and in the region and in town, and it was indicated to us that something like this would be welcomed and it would be very popular. So that's kind of our general thought process behind this. Is we want to have a reception hall, and we want to have a courtyard that's grass in between, and then next to that we'll have, as you can see, well, on the earlier plan, there was a second building that would offer a space to do wedding receptions and actual ceremonies in. So we've been very cautious to think about the neighbors from a sound, light standpoint. We're not going to allow any amplified speakers outside. There's not going to be any rock bands outside. Any music that's amplified is going to be inside. We've come back a little bit on our original hours, so we've taken into account some of the thoughts of the neighborhoods and the neighbors and the meetings we've had with the various folks around there. Our plan is potentially to host anywhere from 300 to 350 people. The wedding venue is somewhat limited, as you've seen on the land plat, from drainage around it as to how much parking we can have. So that's going to somewhat dictate the number of folks that we're able to have. But based on the research we've done, we're hoping to get that around 350 people. So.
Any questions for the applicants?
In case you guys hadn't had a chance to look through, when Jake is referencing the French country, we have a rendering. It'll be attached to the packet that you guys had. It's on your 37th Street event venue is what the heading is on that.
Thank you. Okay, anybody from the audience wish to speak on this issue, come forward, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes, and tell by the large number of people that want to talk. If you could be a little briefer than that, that would be appreciated.
Chuck, we didn't make a record. We all got something from these people.
Oh, before our first speaker starts, we have Need to ask if there are any ex parte communications? Emails, phone calls? Anybody get emails, phone calls on this item? Okay, I think everybody did, so that's just a disclosure. Thank you for bringing that out, Mr. McKay. Okay, now our first speaker, please state your name and address for the record.
Matt Stuckey, Robinson Law Firm, 200 North Broadway. I'm here on behalf of Richard Drake, who lives at 3931 North Bayberry, just north of the proposed PUD. I want to frame the discussion that follows, hopefully for the commissioners. First, by reference to the Unified Zoning Code and the golden factors with which you're familiar. 3 factors that I think predominate our analysis today. First, the extent to which the removal of these restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. Second, the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare as compared to the loss in value or the hardship imposed upon the applicant. And I think most critically, and third, opposition or support of neighborhood residents. Also, by way of framing, I want to point out, and I think this is critical under the zoning code, the PUD applicant bears the burden of proof to satisfy all of these factors. And I think the foregoing discussion is going to show that burden has not and cannot be met. In particular, my client and his neighbors are concerned with proposed use of this property. This is a quiet residential neighborhood, and the proposed use is an event center with alcohol, 300 to 350 people. And with due respect to the comparisons of staff and the application to existing permitted uses, that does not sound like a church to me. Additionally, there is serious concern here about the surrounding floodplain and regulatory floodways. Now, I understand the position of staff. That's an issue for plating and not for you as commissioners. But I don't think that's correct. One of the factors you have to consider is detrimental effect on the neighboring property. And so I think you can and should consider, is this a good idea in terms of where this property is located? And I wanted to point out that although the application claims there will only be a minimal amount of disturbance in terms of an entryway into the platted property, that doesn't seem to be the case. We have a large building. We have potentially a large paved parking lot. And according to FEMA, runoff from a property that goes from natural ground cover to 35% ground cover up to 50-75% ground cover, you can triple or quintuple the amount of rainfall that flows off the property. We have at risk, directly to the west of the proposed development, about $1.8 million worth of real estate. In the immediate area, we have over $10 million in real estate directly at risk. And a single incident of flooding, according to a recent analysis published this year, can decrease home values for 4 or 5 years of up to 25%. That is simply not a risk that we should take, and respectfully, I don't think that's something that should be kicked down the road. That is a question for the commissioners today.
Your time has expired. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. My name is Chris Broderick, and I live at 3927 North Bayberry Circle. I have also submitted a written statement to the city, and I am adamantly against this proposed change. There are 2 key items I want to point out here today. One deals with the elevations of the land, which is public knowledge on GIS maps, and the shell game that we fear as residents is being played right now in front of the city. The site elevations on the GIS maps of the Sedgwick County website show that there is only 3 feet of rise of the edge of the designated 100-year FEMA floodplain to the highest point of the land anywhere in the proposed zone change. I realize the technical studies, surveying, and permitting will be done in the platting process, but this lack of elevation difference is through these wildlife corridors raises significant concerns to the whole city, not only for the decrease in value of homes, but also the decrease in tax revenue for the city. More importantly than this, it will lead homeowners in the city to a possible situation that we all just experienced and paid for as taxpayers that dealt with the Cowscan Creek in West Wichita. I feel that there needs to be a significantly greater amount of work and studying done on this sketching of a few squares that have been put on a map and is telling us it will all be okay. Second, the shell game I reference is the closest thing I can say to explain what we believe as residents is happening. The significant fear that has been brought up with the citizens is that this land could be rezoned, and now we're learning that it won't be official until after platting, but that doesn't change their stance that they could then resell this as commercial property. Many of us feel this way due to comments that were made during one of the mentioned meetings to the neighborhood associations. And the owners of this land who have admitted to having no experience with commercial property management are also the ones who have had the city called due to the sidewalk along 37th Street being partially impassable due to their grass being waist high 2 times during the spring and summer months. Their admitted business plan includes, and I quote, "My wife and his fiance will likely be the ones running and scheduling the center, but none of us will be there to make sure the rules are followed." This was Mr. Hartman's statement to a group of concerned homeowners during the mentioned meeting on November 12th. Due to their lack of plan that they have failed to show burden of proof that they are going to protect our health and safety as homeowners, we are fearful that their investment is really an effort to get it rezoned so that they can sell it to a more experienced developer and turn a quick profit at the expense of homeowners and the city of Wichita. I hope that this MAPC meeting will recommend disapproval of this unsuitable and uncompatible change to our neighborhoods. At the least, we wish that a deferment could be made on this decision until N&J can produce and provide and prove all of the necessary FEMA and Corps engineer studies to ensure our health and safety and welfare of the hundreds of homeowners residing in the area. And to me, this is a key responsibility of this meeting, as Golden Rule number 6 states. Thank you.
Questions for the speaker? Mr. Richardson.
Sir.
Regarding reselling the land, I think everybody needs to understand that the planned unit development goes with the land. It doesn't get changed because he decides to sell it. He can't sell it for something else that's not allowed under the planned unit development. It runs with the land. It doesn't go with him.
Right, so at this point, sir, we don't have that plan. We have squares on a map.
Any additional questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
My name's Bridget O'Hara. I live at 3817 North Cranberry Street in the Teal Cove neighborhood. And I'm not going to, what I can speak to is my house backs up to the floodplain in Teal Cove on the west side. And after living there 28 years, I can tell you the developer, when he finished out the Teal Cove development, did dredge out the land just behind that neighborhood where that floodplain sits. Over time, that floodplain, where the water flows, has filled in because of all the silt that's built up there. And this last spring, when we had such heavy rains, that water went higher than it had ever gone before. I have always measured it by a cottonwood tree that sits behind our yard, and it had never gotten up above the trunk of the cottonwood tree before. It did this time. I also measure it by how high it gets to the bridge on 37th Street, and this year it came within maybe a foot below that bridge. So anything that impacts or increases the drainage into that area right now is going to cause flooding, in my opinion. I'm not a hydrologist. I haven't done any studies, but just over the years, by observation, that's what I would think would happen.
Questions for the speaker? Mr. Hartman.
Do you know how wide that drainage way is to the west of your property?
I would say 100 feet.
Any additional questions? Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Mr. Green.
Yeah, something that we need to, and I don't know if everybody wants to hear it or not, but drainage issues, while they are a concern, are not a matter for a zoning case. Those drainage issues will be handled at the time of plating, as Mr. Hickle said. So if we could limit maybe our comments to things and items that are not related to drainage would be helpful.
Scott?
And I might just clarify that there was a speaker that indicated that it is the commission's concern about drainage. It is the commission that approves the plat. and does address the drainage concerns. They just do it in a separate hearing.
Yeah, I don't know how to get through that.
That this is a zoning hearing, not a plating.
I just said the type 42.
I don't know.
No, it's not coming up.
We have a PowerPoint, some slides that we'd like to.
It's not coming up. That's what I'm pressing. It's not coming up. It came up with the other guy.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, Teal Cove. Whoops, sorry. Sorry about that. Deborah Calloway, 3901 North Cranberry. This is my husband, John Calloway. I have just a small, simple little PowerPoint. We have the Teal Cove neighborhood. It consists of 88 single-family homes, and the addition has been around over 30 years. Sorry. There it is. This is a picture. We're just going to give some visuals that might help you with some of the conversations that have been going on. This is a picture of the 37th Street Bridge that was shown earlier, and it shows the natural wetland view. It shows the marsh in the back. This is the national... Here, sorry. This is the national wetland map that I took off of the internet from the National Wetlands. They do an inventory of national wetlands, and you can see 3 different colors of water. The main big ones are blue, and they are considered freshwater pond. And then there's the green that goes up that looks like a stream. That's considered freshwater emergent wetland. And there's also a small blue one down towards the bottom, the south there. It's considered riverine. This is just a picture showing the wetlands surrounding the property that's to be developed. Here's just a larger view of the wetland. It shows the impact. It goes up towards Willow Bend. It goes on, and it's down below 37th Street. Here is a picture of the flood map with the proposed development, and then this is part of the national wetlands, and our property sits right here behind this. And I just wanted to show a picture of this. It's the Teal Cove Homeowners Association, the Reserve B property where the wetlands are. It's been certified by the Kansas Backyard Wildlife Habitat Program, so we value all the wildlife back there. And I just wanted to summarize, and our president, Shannon Caro, wrote a letter, and I just wanted to say it is the statements of the Board of Directors of the Teal Cove that we oppose this proposed zoning change. Our homeowner property provides a natural preserve for wildlife and has been certified as a backyard wildlife habitat. Our back doors overlook the property proposed to rezone to potentially destructive commercial use and change the natural landscape of this property that has provided protection to the animals, the birds, and flooding of the surrounding homes and areas. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for the speaker? Mr. Richardson?
It would appear from the GIS maps that show ownership that most of the area you show as the wildlife and floodway is owned by the Teal Cove Homeowners Association.
Well, right, correct.
So
directly behind us.
Right, that would remain under your control.
Yes, it would, but any building would impact that flood.
Do you mean because of additional runoff?
Well, yes, and the city engineer was going to look that over with the plating process.
But again, just to be clear, most of that remains, it all remains under your ownership. as a Teal Cove Homeowners
The
Association?
blue part does, the land here does not.
Well, everything that,
Well, the land does, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but yes, it does remain under our ownership for the Teal Cove Homeowner Association.
thank you.
I have a question. If I'm understanding your testimony correctly, what you've said is that any development, no matter the use, would impact the natural, so you don't want any development in this area. You want it to remain vacant land?
Yes,
Thank
he
you.
might answer that.
Can I answer that, sir? We've been there 20-plus years, and no one's able to, or addressed to trying to build back there. But I do welcome that he does have property rights. If he could build it, I would like to see if he was gonna build something, a residential, keep it in the same footprint of the property.
So you don't have an objection to it being developed, you just don't want this development?
Well, just with the property and the just like you said, a venue with the alcohol served. I mean, you got 300 people, you're not gonna contain them in the building. They're gonna go out, alcohol usually brings smoking. And some of that area, some days it's been dry, very dry back there. No telling if somebody could throw a cigarette, burn up, start a fire back there.
Thank you very much, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Deborah Hoffman. I've lived for 25 years in Willow Bend, 4128 Plum Tree. I'm outside the perimeter of the area, just outside the perimeter of the area we're talking about. However, I do know from living in other areas that noise travels far. And even though there won't be the amplified music, there will be a lot of hooping and hollering and things like that. I'm also concerned about the lighting. We haven't heard how tall the lighting's gonna be, how bright it has to be, how many lights will be outside. I have a lot of concerns about the flood problems I was on the maintenance committee and on the board of the Willow Bend Homeowners Association. And I'm very familiar with the problems that Willow Bend has had with flooding into the backyards on our perimeter and sediment coming through and building up in our ponds. And also some aquifers that go by certain houses that have caused flooding all the time in their basements. I will say, I'll talk a little bit about the aesthetics of it. And I'm a nurse too. And I don't believe that people pay enough attention to quality of life. It's always, what can we do technologically here or there? But quality of life is important. It is so important. And in a natural habitat as this is, the pros for it is a high rate of plant growth, and it maintains biodiversity and the integrity of the ecosystems. It helps filter out impurities and other problems. It's a habitat not only for fish and waterfowl, but other wildlife, and a breeding and feeding area for the wildlife. It enhances trees, bushes, and growth of wild grass and stuff. And when you have another huge structure or concrete area and stuff near it and noise, the wildlife, they don't like that. You know, if you have a few single family structures, it's not going to make a lot of noise. That might not be a problem, but a bigger venue would be a problem for wildlife wanting to breed there and settle there. And it really is nice to have that there, even though I'm far away. I do my walking by there. And across the street, south of there, they have had flooding in their recreational areas. And that's all I'm going to talk about, flooding, but I'll let you know that that's happened.
Questions for the speaker?
I have a question.
Mr. Johnson?
Do you have a homeowners association?
Yeah, Willow Bend definitely does.
Okay. Have they tried to buy that property?
No, we have not.
to keep it natural?
No, we have not. Many in Willow Bend are not even familiar with this happening. We've found out just recently.
Is something you think they might consider?
Yes, I have, the few people that I have been able to see emails about through the app of Nextdoor. There is a flurry with the people that do know of being unhappy. And I've not seen one thing for it.
Thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
My name is Pat Risley. I'm the president of the Chisholm Creek Homeowners Association. Please just shoot me now. I live at 22 Lansdowne Street. Would everybody here who's opposed to this from Chisholm Creek, Northbrook, and Teal Cove stand up? You think we're unhappy? Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got some issues with this, and I'm just gonna I wish we had the blue sheet that you have got, because we don't. I'm working off of the information that was out in the lobby. You are talking about allowing a venue to operate 7 days a week, starting as early as 8 o'clock in the morning and ending as late as 1 o'clock at night. That is gonna impact the noise, it's gonna impact the traffic, it's gonna impact the alcohol issue that we've got here. We are half a mile away from the Wichita Children's Home, and that could create some problems in that regard. We are very interested in knowing and looking at number 7 of their proposal, who is going to be monitoring these events? And at this point, we are hearing no one. That is going to be virtually impossible for them to manage the noise level, and people will in fact take music out into the parking lot. We did when we were kids, you did when you were kids, you know, we didn't pay attention to the rules. We are interested also and concerned about the visual impact of building that is 35 feet tall. There's nothing in that neighborhood that is of that height. It possibly would be the apartments that are a little further down the road. So winter, when all of the trees on the leaves are gone, we're gonna start to see light reflection from there regardless of how much they put it down. You are asking under number A17 that the lighting buildings are not permitted on building elevations that face the east and the north. I live west, which means that that light is going to be coming right into the neighbors that live and back up right against that property. We talk about these buffers and who will be maintaining that as it's put in. We already have enough trouble with the buffer that is to the commercial property that is on Woodlawn and 37th to our west. The fences is falling down, and we have to fight with that every year. I would also say to you that when you're talking about event venues, Abode just closed. So while it's very interesting that the possibility of this might make it financially, we can certainly say that the others have not. As far as buying the property is concerned, Chisholm Creek did in fact try to buy it when it was in foreclosure in 2005. We got outbid by another group of people. We tried to buy it back from them. And at that point in time, there was some dysfunction among the board and we couldn't get that done. We would be very interested in going with other people and buying it back.
Questions for the speaker? Seeing none. Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Kermit Morris. I live at 6415 East 39th Street. I would just like to point out that most of your documentation is kind of de-emphasizing the residents to the west. It almost looks like on your maps that you have on your staff document that that's just a buffer area. And I'd like to make sure that you knew that that was a whole bunch of residents there. And just, I don't want to repeat a whole bunch of stuff, just to say that I'm against it. And do you have any questions?
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Dennis Snyder from 4013 North Rushwood Circle, Wichita. Wanted to comment, I live in Teal Cove. I've been a resident for about 32 years in that area, and it's a natural area. I butt right up to Chisholm Creek. We've seen deer, we've seen bobcats, we've seen turkeys by the hundreds back in there. And the more you take away from that natural area, and if you're just considering making money for the city under an increased tax revenue, that's the wrong attitude. Quality of life is better, and I think you should look at that. And raise of hands, how many people in here on the commission has actually been out the property? 3, 4, 5? You need to go out and look at it. The area they want to develop, I've looked at it, I've walked by it for many times just on walks. There's no room out there. It's almost all from the street, all wooded area. So I just appreciate you take your consideration in not passing this. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Emily Stone, and I live on the west side of this planned development. I live at 7 Monarch Drive with my parents. They've lived there for over 25 years. We have gone into this area to sort of hike. We see turkeys, we see deer, like he said, we see lots of different animals. The marsh, the grasses, the flowers that they produce support wildlife and insects in our community that the whole world needs. We have a hive at my child's school. We need the bees, they need this land, they need the flowers. The terrain there is really erratic, and I don't know how they're going to develop that without putting so much cement or asphalt that it's going to, just destroy that whole area and the marshland, and we're going to have flooding. It's just not a good plan. The lights, the noise, it's going to impact us. There's no way that they can put trees up that are going to be tall enough. What are they going to put that's a barrier? The lights from the Sonic on the other side of us shine through the bushes and the fence there. This is going to be, shining lights in everybody's houses on their, it's just not going to be a good deal. Not to mention that there'll be alcohol and cigarettes and that kind of thing right there. And we have kids. I have a 5-year-old. She doesn't need to be going for a walk and seeing thousands of cigarette butts because they've got a wedding venue where people are out drinking and things. I think it's a very poor decision to rezone this so that they can put a wedding place there. Thanks.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Yes, the name is Mike Burgess. I also live in Willow Bend, 4219 North Ironwood Court. And if you'll look up at the top upper right-hand corner where the Chisholm Lake kind of winds around there, I walked that when I was on the board of directors and I was head of maintenance with Frank Mills, who happened to work for Abla Enterprises, who developed that property up there. We walked that entire area, and unless I'm mistaken, if you walk that area today, you're going to find bales of hay that are about 14 feet up in the trees. That's without any development there. Put something there, I don't know what's going to happen. But the city has been in there twice before. Once before, Stormwater might be able to answer this question, but they've been in there once to clean it out. When we asked them to come back because the backyards and the homes along Sweet Bay and Champions were beginning to flood, not quite up to the houses, but close enough that it got them rather alarmed. The city said they would not come back out to do that again unless or until the golf course cleaned up their act. There's a number of areas there that are contributing. This will just be another contributing factor to the flooding problem that we've already had for years. What I would like to focus on with the rest of my time, however, is something else that's going on here. I don't know what or who's going to babysit this facility or the parking lot and the area around it when it's not being used. But I'm pretty sure that locals will use that parking lot for something other than what we want them to use it for. And I would not want my backyard, my house backing up to that. We were promised by the city about 10 years ago, before they built Inwood Commons, a subsidized housing development behind Carrabba's, just south of East 37th. We were promised it wouldn't be a problem. I get the police reports once the Dix Bureau releases the police reports to the public. That location gets more reports taken than any other location within a 5-mile radius of our home. So much for the promise. We also have to the east of us, we have Mirror, where there can be at any time up to 60 early released felons released from federal prisons that are registered drug, sex, or violent offenders, or a combination of those. So we're hit from the east, we get it from the south, now they want to get us from the west. Where do we go? Surely there has to be a better place for this facility to go, other than right there, where there's nothing but problems looming in the future for us as residents. We've got $250,000 homes and up there. I think they can do better than this.
Questions for the speaker? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
My name's Dale Reed. I live at 11 Chisholm Creek Drive, and I won't take up much of your time because I agree with all the opposition that's been stated previously. One thing that hasn't been talked about that I think is zoning, and the developer or the owner can't do anything about either. If you put that event center in there, what are you going to do about traffic? You're going to be traveling east off of Woodlawn, and to have an event, you're going to turn across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic. They can't control that. That's a big deal versus residential. This is currently zoned residential. Leave it as such. And I think you're going to see traffic and an event back up to Woodlawn or beyond. And I'll leave it with that. That's a zoning issue.
Any questions for the speaker? Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Lou Ann Hale, and I live at 32 Chisholm Creek, which would put this venue kind of right in my backyard. When I moved to Chisholm Creek, I left Valley Center, which was, I was living in a subdivision that had a retention lake where we were assured before we brought the property there that the city and county or whoever engineers had promised them that there could no way it would ever flood. And we bought the house and put all of our equity from 2 other houses and a lot of money into it. And we bought it in June, I believe, 30th. No, June 30th. Moved in July 4th, and it flooded August 10th, back when in 2008, when all that flooding happened in Valley Center. And I bought that condo. I've lived in that condo pretty much since 2010. And I, cannot take another flood. I worry about people smoking when they're drinking out in the back. There is a lot of dry things back there. And I've already lived through one fire at this condo from my next door neighbor smoking and flipping out a cigarette, or someone somehow, I guess, out of midair flipping a cigarette out and lighting up some dry grass. And it practically broke me trying to rebuild my condo one time. That was 2012 maybe. I don't want to live through all this again. I don't want my condo flooding. I don't want to get it hit by, another fire. And I just think that this is the wrong place to build it. You don't take it and put something like this in the middle of a residential area and just drop it right in the middle of all these people's homes. It's just ridiculous. they could have gone down towards Rock Road where there's all these buildings, there's a million businesses that have gone flat right in that area. And, what are they gonna do when they can't pay their bills? They can't pay for this. Then what happens? They're gonna abandon it like all the other people on Rock Road did. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
My name's Patty Winiger. I live at 16 Lansdowne at Chisholm Creek. I'm worried about the owners of this place keeping it, once it's built, keeping it clean and around it. Last summer, we had trouble. They would not mow the grass along 37th Street. It got so high that a veteran was walking down 37th Street in front of this area. He fell and could not get back up. Nobody could see him from the street. And if it hadn't have been for another resident and I leaving the condo at that time, he would have just laid there. And we were able to get an ambulance to come and pick him up and take him away. And I also agree with the lady. You're putting a venue right in the middle of a residential area that goes totally around it. And you're going to devalue our homes and cause a lot of havoc to our homes. And we're probably going to lose a lot of residents because in Chisholm Creek, we have a lot of older residents. We feel safe there. And at night, I feel I can walk out of my door and walk around the complex in the middle of the night. That's how safe I feel there. Am I going to feel that safe if I have a venue with a bunch of people over there? I don't know. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Jana Olkers, and I live at 19 Chisholm Creek. And I just have 2 points I want to make. I found out after I bought that out of our 70 units, mine is the lowest setting grading-wise. I did $15,000 worth of landscaping when I moved in, and since then, I've personally put in between $2,000 and $3,000, and the HOA has also put in a couple of thousand, and I've worked with 2 excavating companies, a professional landscaping company, and I've learned a lot. Also, I'm a gardener, and I understand the importance of grass and trees and the roots in the ground controlling runoff. So to me, the big reason why the zoning issue of making it commercial, I'm really against it, is any commercial building, whether it's an entertainment venue or whatever else they want to develop, wherever you put in a parking lot or a large square footage building, you are taking away grass and trees. That is going to affect water runoff. That's a huge reason not to zone this as commercial, whatever they decide to make it, turn it into. The other issue that the gentleman brought up, one of my neighbors, who I don't know, hello, but he brought up traffic. Traffic on Woodlawn and 37th is just horrific, and making any kind of left turns is an issue. But I also have a concern about the traffic within our community. We have an entrance entrance exits onto Woodlawn and onto 37th Street. We, through our HOA dues and special assessments, have to pay for our own streets, not the city of Wichita. Chisholm Creek condominium residents pay for these streets. We already have cars who have learned they can cut through. If there is a public venue of any sort, anything that's commercial, the traffic that goes through our community, I guarantee you, is really going to increase. I'm not an engineer. I haven't done any studies. I just know that anything commercial on this north side of 37th Street is really, really going to be detrimental to our community.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
My name is David Geist. I live at 2 Maverick in Chisholm Creek. And all of you who stood up earlier against this idea, I hope you brought hand grenades because I am for this idea. Oh dear, yes, there it is right there. Let me tell you why. The drainage that's currently a problem will be fixed. I don't doubt this because the engineers in this city are good. It's been said before, there are engineers in Kansas and then there's Wichita. Wichita engineers are pretty doggone good at the stuff they do. As far as the grass goes, it's an economic incentive. Right now, there's no incentive to take care of that area. If this property is developed, they're going to want it to look good all the time. A venue that doesn't look good will not get business. If it doesn't look good, it reflects bad on the neighborhood. Alcohol, okay, yeah, that could be a problem, but we've also got a number. I'm thinking 5 or 6 alcohol stores in the area, plus a few restaurants that sell alcohol as a part of their menu. I've not noticed any problem with that, but attribute that to our excellent Wichita Police Department and Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office for doing a good job of keeping the drunk drivers off the highway. Noise, I worked in radio for 25 years. I do dances, I DJ dances, weddings, karaoke. I can tell you the sound inside a building pretty much stays in the building. If the building is designed properly and if the person who's designed the sound system knows what they're doing, the sound stays in the building. I seriously doubt anybody's going to be woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to Madonna. As far as the pond goes, the pond is an eyesore. I have seen that thing covered over with algae. And this is the blue-green algae that is detrimental to children, to people, and can kill dogs. It is a stagnant pond. It does not have an outflow and has very little water coming into it. I think by developing this land properly, which again, I think the city engineer's office will do a good job of that, will make that pond look really, really nice and will add to the value. There's been a lot of mention about traffic. Yeah, we're talking about a small venue. We're not talking about Woodstock. Those of you who are old enough to remember Woodstock, what a traffic jam that was. I doubt we're going to have any serious issues with parking and traffic along those lines. And finally, the valuation has been an issue. But there have been studies, and I've got one here from Housing and Urban Development that shows that if an undeveloped property is developed properly, the home values increase in value. I do not see a devaluation coming. I see the home property values going up. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Next speaker, please.
My name's Marty Bast. I live at 5 Lansdowne in Chisholm Creek. I moved there, I'm retired. I'm also had a nightclub here in Wichita and operated and owned it. And I also had people that had to come to my club, neighbors, and say, we're hearing a lot of noise in your area. So I had to control the DJs, and I had live music 7 nights a week. So I have a firsthand knowledge of what music and DJs do. I love music, don't get me wrong. But in our area, I retired to live in the place that I live now. It's very quiet, and we'd like to keep it that way. We have 70% of our residents that are retired, and they love the community there. They like the wildlife that's there. We really enjoy where it is, and we really hate to see the area change. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Any additional speakers? Seeing.
My name is Tim Johnson. I live at 3921 Jasmine in Willow Bend. Prior to that, I lived at 3968 Sweet Bay. Prior to that, I lived at 2 locations in Bel Air. I can remember when this intersection was nothing but fields. and Chisholm Trail Bank. I watched the commercial development at the northwest corner of 37th and Woodlawn be developed. Sad, sad land use planning. That is in Bel Air, not in Wichita. I understand that change is difficult. It's scary. I get that. I watched it for almost 30 years. I'm a retired city administrator, community development director, and city planner. I sympathize with everybody here who is opposed to this. However, I support it. I do believe that this will be an incremental improvement in this intersection and in this corridor. I do support the use of a planned unit development application in this case because it allows you, the commission, and the city council to restrict in bullet points everything that is allowed to happen with this project. That even includes the number of buildings, their size, their heights, landscaping, things that you all don't have restrictions on in your homes, even more so than those of us who have restrictive covenants, such as Willow Bend. And I've lived in Willow Bend now for almost 20 years. I would much rather have this here than another commercial strip center or a small cul-de-sac. I'll be happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any additional speakers? Not, we'll close that part and bring the applicant back. You have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Not sure how I did that. Levi Bond with Caw Valley again. Just want to go through some of the points. I know there was quite a few. I think most of them were already addressed in the PUD itself. I'm not sure that everyone got the chance to read it, as the majority of the Chisholm Creek is actually rentals. So they probably didn't get the mailing packet. To moot point. Anyway, I'm not sure that everyone got it because of the ownership radius and then rental properties in the area. Wanted to just quickly say that there's no evidence there's going to be any detrimental effects here. Joe Hickle is going to make us be honest and make us have a good drainage plan for this at the time of platting. We're not going to make the drainage any worse. There's neighborhoods throughout the cities that are next to commercial and industrial, and they all develop fine and they seem to coexist. There's actually uses like this throughout the city. I know that they say that there's a chance that it's going to fail, but there's a chance that any business is going to fail. It's the U.S. We have the right to succeed or to fail. It's never been the city's policy to choose winners and losers. Just for reference, there's active venues around the city working right next to residential areas such as Venue 3130, right across the street, right backed up, no buffers. We're offering 100 feet on our property to the west and then 25 on the east and the north. We're going to try to do everything we can to be good neighbors, and that'll knock down the sound. Also wanted to quickly clarify, we're not touching any of the wetlands except for maybe the drive. It might touch it. We might have to get a permit to go through with the drive, but we're not touching any of the wetlands, and we're not touching any of the neighbor's property. We're sticking only on our parcel. I know there's some questions about the lights. We have limited the lights in the PUD, which you guys know, to 15 feet and shielded downwards. With our landscape buffers and our development plan, I don't know how light would spill over to be a nuisance to these neighboring residentials. I looked at the reserve to the east. Its frontage is over 250 feet. It's hard to measure on my phone, so I couldn't tell you other than that. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I know there's a lot more topics that they touch, but it should be addressed in the PUD, and I'm happy to clarify.
Questions for the speaker. Mr. Hartman.
Yes, what is the maximum building height on this PUD?
35 feet.
And the maximum square foot of the buildable area?
I think it's 35% of the gross area of the parcel, which I don't think we'll be using that.
Okay, and then on these landscape buffers, what are you proposing for landscaping in those areas?
So we want to keep as much of the natural foliage as we can that's already there. And then some of the bald spots, if you will, where there's not trees, we'd like to plant some more of the natural material to match it. We'd like to kind of clean out the undergrowth so there's not these fire problems that they're talking about. So, you know, if there's a cigarette butt somehow gets loose, it's ours. If it's a passerby, if it's someone in the neighborhoods, we're just cleaning out the tree rows. We're not taking them down.
Mr. McKay?
What direction does it go, north or south?
North, right? What was the question? Which way does it flow?
My question is,
direction is
which
it?
way does the creek flow, north or south?
North. Or the south. Yeah. Sorry, to clarify, north to south, coming from the north.
Additional questions? Hand over here, but I didn't see who. Mr. Blick?
Question I have is, I know when I went out to the site, I went to the south side and I seen some trees and stuff. Do you have any photos or anything of inside facing out to the residential neighborhood or anything? Because I was just wondering, because Mr. Hartman kind of answered some of my questions, without getting into a site plan discussion or anything like that, I was just wondering, and Mr. Hartman asked that, is, you know, the natural foliage and landscaping, and with the top of the roof being maximum 35, is that gonna, pretty much what you're leaving there also is gonna help hide some of that?
Correct, and we do have some photos walking around the edge of the parcel. All of these will be labeled. This is looking at the floodway. This Chisholm Creek. This is not on our property. This is showing what it looks like. This is looking north. This is Teal Cove over here. This is their property as well, and just showing what the foliage is like. This is, you know, your worst case because all the leaves are completely off of this. And then I have the pictures numbered here, so that was 1 and 2 right there. And then we go and we start walking down the west property line. So we're looking east at our pond right here. So this is kind of that bald spot I was talking about. With the proposed language, we have to meet or exceed. So I would assume we throw a couple more trees in here to meet the solid screening standards. Of course, when we go in for building permit, we're gonna have to have a landscape plan and show all that, so.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and then more, this is the non-bulb areas. This is, you can see even without leaves that it's very hard to see through all this, so. And this is looking at Northbrook, and then this is 8 was here looking back this way. So if you see from the Teal Cove side, that's why we went a little bit smaller with our landscape reserves over here. It's super thick looking back to our property. I couldn't even tell you where it is because this is the drainage reserve over here, so.
Additional questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Bring it back to the commission. Mr. Green? Mr. Foster?
This is a staff question, Dave. I want to understand the landscape buffering, you know, in accordance with landscape ordinance. Are we talking solid screening relative to any residential abutting use? Or are we talking per the ordinance where it might be like 1 per 30 foot or something like that? The reason I'm asking that is we've got I'm trying to understand the ownership of property on the east and the north.
Well, let me start with the last part of your question. The land to the east is owned by the Teal Cove Homeowners Association. The land to the north in this area is owned by the Northbrook Homeowners Association. The proposed landscape buffer as shown on their the new proposed site plan is putting an additional 25 feet on the east side, an additional 25 feet along the north side, and 100 feet on the west side. West side is where it abuts Chisholm Creek condominiums. The language that they are proposing in their revised drawing talks about just leaving natural conditions in these reserve areas on all four sides, or on three sides. So what we had originally proposed was just reference to the landscape ordinance, and I'll defer to Scott, who's better adept at discussing that, but there would be, there is the ability to use existing vegetation to meet the landscape requirements. If it has to be supplemented, there could be some additional plantings, but that would be more addressed if this thing went forward.
That answer your question, Mr. Foster?
I think I'm looking for solid screening here.
The way it's worded, it does not require that. It's a landscape buffer, not solid landscape screening.
Okay, folks, we can approve, deny, or defer. Mr. Johnson.
I'm going to make a motion to approve per staff comments along with the revised recommendations that have been submitted to us.
We have a motion. Is there a second to that
Second.
motion? There's a second to the motion. Additional discussion.
Got a question.
Mr. Richardson.
Bill, what do you mean by the additional? Are you talking about the blue sheet here, and can we just
Yes.
make sure we understand?
Yes.
So your number one would leave in single family but eliminate the other, would be just like the staff, except leave the single family as a permitted use, right?
Yes.
The teen club has already been in the staff recommendations to be omitted, so I don't think that's an issue. And leave parking according to code, and keep the signs as recommended by the staff. And then we have the acceptable changes to the landscape buffering there, items.
Yes.
Is that, understand that? Okay, thanks.
And I guess I'd go on to say, I got to agree with one of the last speakers that talked about, we see a lot of cases where this comes up where there are drainage issues, but once there's a new project done under the new standards, and he's exactly right, the city does a very good job in redeveloping this stuff. I think you'll see something that's a whole lot more pleasant to the eye, less drainage problems and traffic. That all be studied. It may be a traffic light out there or whatever may be required later, but we ain't gonna discuss that today.
I've got a comment I'm going to make at the point before we vote on the motion. In a perfect world, we'd leave this for the turkeys and the deer and whatever critters want to live out there, because that's really a beautiful thing. But we don't own it. There's an individual that owns this, and I'm not willing to take away their right to do something that I think that would be an improvement to the area with proper controls and regulations in terms of zoning, traffic, drainage. That I think we can deal with all of those issues. But just to deny them, that I think that would be a problem. So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion. Additional questions or comments, Mr. Foster?
Dave, I'm curious, and you may have already stated it, what was the DAB decision on December 9th?
We haven't been to December 9th. This will be heard next Monday.
I apologize.
Additional questions or comments? Mr. Yes, sir. Scott?
One thing I want to point out to the commission, if you do allow single-family residential, you're required by state statute to also allow group home. Group home.
Any further discussion? We have a motion before us. Those in favor of the motion signify with the raised hand. Those opposed, same sign. Show 3. Florence, Mills, and Foster. Motion passes 11-3. Give people a moment to depart, just a moment. Give everybody one more 30 seconds to move out so we can move on. Thank you for coming. I've lost my agenda. Let's see here.
Number 4.7.
4.8. Next item is agenda item 4.8, city zone change from single family to TF3. Philip?
Yes, this request was filed to, actually, there's two different zone requests here. One is to rezone some land that is TF3 back to SF5. The other part is to zone some SF5 land to TF3.
Philip, let me put your break on there. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to hear this issue? We had a request earlier that wanted to hear it, but I'm not sure that person is still here. Okay, I'll go.
It's the zoning case at Pawnee and Webb.
Did we have a hand that somebody wants to hear this?
It's fairly short.
Okay, make it brief. We'll go quickly.
So, all in all, the property that was zoned TF3 was approved as zoning 2019-07 back in April of 2019. The applicant then went through the plating process. Once their plating process was done, they realized that the zoning of TF3 did not match the lot lines for the development that they were going to do TF3 zoning in. And so this is basically cleaning up the zoning so it matches the plat. The plat was submitted to Planning Commission in October 10th. It was approved, has yet to be scheduled for City Council for final approval.
Questions for staff? Seeing none, agent or applicant?
Good evening, Will Clevenger with Garver here on behalf of the applicant. As Philip said, this is to clean up some of the zone change boundaries that we had approved earlier this year. During the course of the platting, we had to make some revisions, drainage, marketing, that sort of thing, and this would just be a minor change to reflect the plat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody from the audience wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Okay, a motion to approve by Mr. Blick, a second by Mr. McKay. All those in favor signify with the raised hand. Passes unanimous. Four point nine was a consent, so 410 zoning change 2019 00047. Kathy.
Good evening, or good pre-evening, whatever. This property is located out at Turkey Creek. It's, you can see, it's zoned, the Turkey Creek development was originally zoned single family, and as your staff report states, I think it was in April of 2019, the TF3 was rezoned, and now they are requesting rezoning of a portion, 17.8 acres on the south side that will front 135th Street. There's an undeveloped CUP at the corner of Pawnee and 135th Street. That's limited commercial with other restrictions on the CUP. This area is undeveloped. The platted area is undeveloped at this point. On the west side of 135th Street is agricultural land. This is something that the change from SF5 to TF3 in a lot of these platted subdivisions, the commission has heard where they've requested portions that front arterials be allowed to be developed as TF3, and that does fit within our comprehensive community investment plan, and this is an appropriate area for residential development, as you can see from new residential development from the future growth concept map. This is, as I said, it's undeveloped. This is outside of what the Turkey Creek addition is, looking northeast at the site. This is looking north on 135th, and so the area that was rezoned to TF3 there's a house here and it's north of that, the TF3 rezoning area. Looking south, this residence here is part of the county, and then south of that is Pawnee, and this is the corner where the CUP area development is designated. And this is the ag land on the west side of 135th Street, still actively used for agriculture. So staff is recommending that this 17.8 acres out of Turkey Creek subdivision would be allowed to be rezoned to TF3, and I will answer any questions.
Questions for Kathy? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. Richardson.
Kathy, go back to the aerial photo there just for a minute, would you? How much of that land to the east of there is developed? Is it all developed now, or only the aerial photo I have only shows the kind of the far east side developed? Is that still true?
I think, yes, only this has been.
But on the other side of the creek there?
Yes. As single family, yes.
No, I'm talking about, yeah, right in there. How much of that's developed out towards 135th?
I am seeing a house at that location, and then coming down here and along this line.
Yeah, how recent is that? Maybe.
It's just the east half there, Lowell, that's got houses on it.
Okay, so
I think everything east of where those sort of pond areas are.
Right.
Is being built up, everything else is vacant or farmland.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Mary. Agent or applicant?
You can move that way.
Russ Avey, agent for the applicant with Boffman Company. I'll stand to answer any questions. I believe there's one gentleman here that had the question originally. I'll stand and answer any questions you may have or wait for the rebuttal.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Anybody from the audience wish to speak on this issue?
Yes, I'm Brian Brown. I live at 13315 West Pawnee. So I will be looking basically at the back of the properties that are proposed here. I know I've spoken to two of my adjacent retired neighbors, and they are also opposed to this being changed to a duplex community, just for the sake of reducing our property values. We all have homes in the 1 to 5 acre range, at least on the near immediate corner. And we just feel like this will depreciate the value of our homes. Not opposed to it being single family, but the TF3 proposal is what we are against.
Sir, can you show me, with using the mouse, could you show us about where you live in relationship to this?
Yeah, this is me right here.
Here,
Sorry.
look here, sir, look right here.
Okay, it's the same. Yes. So this is me here. And then I've also, like I said, spoken to these neighbors and these neighbors. And then, as far as what is developed around there, within the 1,000-foot perimeter or whatever is, I believe there would be 7 or 8 homes impacted by that. So I intend to query the rest of them for the petition.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Russ, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Again, Russ Avey, agent for the applicant. The only comments that I'll make is that we do have this roughly 600 by 600 foot limited commercial development that will ultimately develop at this intersection, as well as a couple of cul-de-sacs with a few dozen home sites that will ultimately provide no direct visual impact from these duplexes at this location for the people lying south of Pawnee. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for us, Mr. Green?
Yeah, Russ, I know that the 2 lots that are commercial development, what's that one? Yeah,
It's all commercial. Yes, sir.
thank you.
Any additional questions for us? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Move for approval?
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Hartman, a second by Ms. Miles. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify with the raised hand. Opposed, same sign. 13-1, 12-1. Mr. Johnson, Joe Johnson voted. Joe voted against it. Yeah. Okay, according to my agenda that's been written all over upon, we need to go back to the one that we deferred, 4.1. Who's got that one? Matthew?
Matthew just doubled his age here, and Stephen Banks, Metropolitan Planning. Let's see. Whoops, wait a minute. How do we, this thing. There we go. Okay, in 2018, District 3 used some grant proceeds from the sale of the Hyatt to fund a neighborhood plan for the South Central neighborhood. RDG Planning and Design was selected to create the neighborhood plan guided by an advisory committee. What resulted was a plan by the community, for the community, and leaders in the community are asking through this plan, how do we build social capital while creating places for all? The plan pivots the target user of the document from the administrators, mainly the city, to neighborhood residents. There are 5 themes with vision, set of goals, and strategies for each of them. I'll highlight each of these separately. And the first one is building social capital, which is at the heart of this plan. The responsibility of residents would be to connect on social media and neighborhood association, activate neighborhood association in strategic zones. Since the South Central area is so big, they would target areas for subcommittees or sub-associations. Another strategy to organize volunteer efforts, reactivate the business association, create more volunteerism, and conduct leadership training. And the city's roles would be to assign a neighborhood liaison, continue to police the neighborhood, and then come back to this plan in 15 years, see if it needs an update. The next item is maintaining and improving the homes. This would mean scheduling neighborhood cleanups, reporting violations, and launch an interfaith-based coalition. City's roles would include code enforcement and growing city-sponsored incentives that would contribute to resident involvement. The third theme is positioning the South Central neighborhood for reinvestment and encourage patronage of local businesses by residents and recruiting businesses to the South Central area. The city's role would be in activating a community development corporation and leveraging and providing incentives and adopting design guidelines for some of its efforts. There are two target areas in this plan. Well, there's more targets, but two major target areas are Harry and Broadway, and the northwest area, which would be along Waco toward Kellogg. The next theme is enhancing the experience of moving around the neighborhood. Neighborhood residents would be involved in updating their neighborhood brand, lobby for circulation improvements and reporting street and sidewalk deficiencies. For their part of the city's responsibilities would be redesigning Main Street, building new sidewalks, and improving street lighting with cooperation with Evergy. And the fifth theme is creating places for all, which is develop a plan for the Boston Commons project pilot. Also, for the city's part, there'd be implementing an interim riverfront pathway. This would be on Greenway Boulevard with the idea of eventually fitting that for active transportation, meaning biking and hiking and other amenities along that road, which is fairly wide and could accommodate much of these. We went to the DAB on November 6th, where this plan was unanimously approved. Our plan is to take it to City Council on January 7th and to the Board of County Commissioners on January 15th. There is an update to the location guidelines, and that is a result of October 10th, 2019 MAPC meeting in response to a proposal for a conditional use to allow a used car lot in the South Central neighborhood. The MAPC requested that the upcoming South Central neighborhood plan include recommendations on how used car lots could be permitted within the neighborhood. Staff's recommendation is to amend the language of the least desirable land uses to the following. The least desirable land uses for the neighborhood include motels, bars, used car lots, and resource processing industries. In the case that the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission finds that a conditional use for a used car lot is an appropriate use within the neighborhood, the following conditions should be included. The use should be limited to The use should be limited to 3 years, at which time the applicant should be required to return to obtain additional time for the conditional use. In addition to uses permitted in the LC Limited Commercial District, the site should be limited to the sales of cars and light trucks. No sale or rental of trailers, vehicles, or trucks larger than pickups should be permitted. The vehicle sales lot shall not be conducted in conjunction with any use not directly related to such a business. And that is staff's position. However, Adam Barlow Thompson, representing South Central, will have more to say on that issue. Any questions?
Any questions for Matthew before we continue?
Steve.
Mr. McKay?
Just one on the limitations. You said nothing larger than a pickup.
Right.
How about a van, minivan? And, I mean, a pickup could be anything from a half-ton to one of those great big ones, big tires. I guess if you're going to be that specific, then I don't know what to say.
Well, imagine the largest pickup, and I don't think I've seen any vans as large as that large pickup that was a private use individual. Now, there are some commercial vans that might exceed that, but I think the idea is that we're not allowing that.
And I'm just asking the question, like a 16-passenger van.
I have a comment on that. This is standard language that we have used in conditional uses probably 40 times. And so it's probably a little late to bring it up.
Mr. Richardson?
Well, the government has a sort of a light truck definition, and I assume that's what we're talking about here, Scott, is.
I would think that the way in which these things get enforced, we're never going to split the hairs you guys are trying to split.
Additional questions? Not? Okay, where do we go from here? We got more.
I move we adopt the resolution.
We got a little more.
Well,
business.
we have some people that wish to speak.
Okay. Go right ahead. You have the name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name's Adam Barlow Thompson. I'm at 1121 South Waco in the northwest part of this neighborhood, and wanted to speak for the neighborhood plan. It's a plan that we have used to gain momentum in a neighborhood that's needed it badly. It's a plan that we've spent months with gathering people around and getting them excited about. I'm very much excited to present it to you today as this finished product. I just wanted to put one note about the amendment that is on there. The neighborhood plan is about a community of people who are primarily underserved coming together to do something good for their community. And this commission has made it about car lots, and that sucks. And so what I'd ask you to do is just not do the amendment at all. You're going to do what you want with the car lots. We've seen that in previous meetings, and so that's okay. We understand you're going to do what you want. We don't care about the car lots and what you guys think about them and how they may or may not impact our neighborhood. We're going to continue to use this plan and rally around it and rally people around it so that we can improve our neighborhood and make it a place that people in Wichita want to be at and want to come down and visit and be a part of the other things that are happening there. And so I just wanted to put that out there as the amendment felt like it was put on by pressure from this commission, and it's not something that we know. It was never brought up in any of our meetings that were for the leadership of this item. And so I didn't even know about it until today. And so just to put that little note on the amendment, that's not the point of this plan. The plan is to rally a neighborhood around doing something good in their community. Any questions?
Questions for the speaker? Mr. Richardson?
Yeah, I applaud what you're doing there. Appreciate that. Are you getting, one of the things it says under building social capital is to sign a neighborhood liaison to attend neighborhood meetings. Do you feel like the city's giving you that support at this point in time?
So James Clinton is our city council person, and Maddie Campbell is the person who's kind of been assigned to our area, and she does an amazing job, and everybody should go and thank Maddie for the work she does for our city.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Blick?
I just want to congratulate you guys on your great job. This plan is probably one of the best ones I've seen so far. I know your commitment to the community and for your neighborhood is really noticed throughout the city, and I appreciate it. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hartman?
I've got a comment on the parking or the used car lots. I mean, we don't like them any more than you do, but we would like to see something there that's building value rather than sitting there vacant. So that's where we came up with the approval of these lots limited to 3 years, so that we could go back and review them in 3 years, and if there was a better use, we would more than attain that use.
Whatever you want. We come every time there's a car lot. We ask you not to do it, you do it, and then you put the conditional use on it with 3 years. So, I mean, in practice, I don't think it changes anything.
Additional questions for the speaker? Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak on this issue? You have the floor. 3 minutes. Name and address, please.
My name is Katherine Johnson. I live at 1106 South Waco. I serve on the District 3 Advisory Board, and I'm also a member of the committee that came together to work on this plan. I'm also a member of the Neighborhood Association for South Central Neighborhood. I have lived in the neighborhood since 2008, and I came here today. I took unpaid time off work so that I could be here to advocate for this plan because I'm excited about it, and I'm excited about the way that it has guided conversations already. I know that you saw the timeline, but we've already started acting on it. In August, we had block parties. We drew people around it. As Adam said, it was a rallying point, and people started to connect to things like, I could do that action step. I could do that. I can head up that. And so it's been exciting to see people come together. I really appreciate those action steps for the residents, that it's not just a plan that we dump at the feet of the city, but that it's something that we are owning and taking part in. I also appreciate that it's positive and it looks at the assets in our neighborhood and it has faith in the residents that we can make some of these things happen. Again, as far as the proposed amendment, that was a shock to me when I arrived here today. And I feel that the work of the District Advisory Board in kind of vetting these sorts of proposals such as car lots, I think that that should be honored. I know that the board is very thorough, asks a lot of questions, and so I feel like their recommendations should be honored in that. And as we've said, there are over 70 used car lots between 47th and Kellogg. That seems like a lot. They're not all flourishing, so I would prefer to not advocate for adding more of those. We are looking at the point on the plan of gathering together businesses to form an association to nurture more development like we've talked about. I know that we need more businesses, and so we're looking at ways to do that so that businesses can nurture each other and come together as best that we can. Questions?
Questions for the speaker? Seeing that, thank you very much. Appreciate your input. Anybody else wish to speak on this issue?
Janet Price, I live at 2010 South Water Street, and I'm president of South Central Neighborhood Association, and I just want to say that we've worked real hard at getting neighborhood support for this plan. When we did our neighborhood cleanup this fall, I talked to people about the plan as I passed out flyers to thousands of people, and there was a real investment this time because of the positive focus, I believe. So I hope that we can adopt this plan and work from a positive perspective to watch South Central grow. We did get a new business since the last time I came and spoke. We now have where the Commerce Bank was, we now have a Nation Star funeral home. So there is potential for us to have things besides car lots, and that's what we're going to work for as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
I would just like to thank you for staying around all afternoon. And I would also like to acknowledge that every one of our board members are here to listen to you.
Any other speakers? Ms. Miles? Oh, go ahead.
Very short, Matthew Johnson, 1106 South Waco. And
I'm only going to share very briefly because I have been here 4 hours waiting to share. But what I want to drive home with you is that as we have been creating this plan, we have seen the beginning of building trust. And I would reiterate that I think adding the amendment erodes that trust. I think that once again, folks in the neighborhood will look at that and say, but wait a minute, we've already been struggling with this. Why are we looking at this again? So I would just drive home again. I appreciate your approval of the plan. I would scratch this addition and let's move forward and let's partner because I think great things are in store. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you. Ms. Miles?
I just want to say kudos to all of you for your commitment to the South Central neighborhood. I know I had the opportunity to work with you in creating this plan, and I appreciate all the feedback and stuff that occurred and all the people that were able to bring in. But overall, your commitment just to cleaning up the area. So thank you.
Mr. Hartman, you had the first opportunity. I'll let you finish what you started earlier.
I move we adopt the attached resolution adopting the South Central Neighborhood Plan. And hearing the testimony here today, I don't know if we want to add that updated least desirable land uses section or not. It sounds like it's a slap in the face, and if they don't care, I'd just soon leave it out. We're gonna look at each case individually anyway, so I would say we leave that part out of my request.
I'm gonna second.
I want to add to some of the positive comments here, but I want to speak directly to Scott, Mary, and Matthew, and especially you all that have come. What caught my attention as I read through here is on page 7. The organization of this plan is not traditional to other neighborhood plans. This is an excellent document. It takes a tough subject and it gets right to the important questions. It gives your vision and everything. So you have a document to be proud of there, and as well as the consultant that was involved. One suggestion I would make, though, for someone who doesn't really know South Central very well or someone from out of town, I would suggest there ought to be a graphic somewhere in there at the very beginning to orient someone to the place of South Central in the city. It's not till page 24 that there's an actual map, and then you can't figure out, well, where is that in the city of Wichita? So just a real simple graphic, I think, for people who, want to come and consider South Central, it would orient them very quickly. But again, great job.
If there are no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion signify with the upraised hand. Motion passes unanimously. Before we adjourn, let me thank staff. Let me thank you as commissioners for a long meeting. You did a good job paying attention and listening to the concerns of those that came, and you asked good questions. So you are to be commended for that. And with that, we stand adjourned.
Wait, no dinner and drinks, Mr. Warren?